Welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show, also known as Heartland at Home during the time of the pandemic. This is number 59 for the week of July 3rd, and Katie and I are here to welcome in a couple of really good guests. We're going to have Ray Long, the Chicago Tribune reporter, and our friend Chris Bell of Flats and Sharp Music. So good morning to you, Katie. How about sharing a little bit of something good that has happened in your life this week?
Thank you, Michael. Good morning. I think the good thing this week was the monsoon rains that we experienced while being a bit deluge-like. Certainly relieved myself and all my fellow gardeners of watering duty for about a week, and brought out the lushness of Chicago gardens, and really reminds us that the motto "Herbs and Horto, City in a Garden," there's a reason for that. How about yourself? What good thing happened to you this week?
Well, speaking of monsoon rains, I experienced a few when my friend Gordon Thompson and I took off and went down to central Illinois for about 32 hours. We took the interstate only to Ottawa, and then we headed south to Benson, Illinois, where my great-great-grandparents are buried. We actually found the grave right away, kind of by accident. We went to the town where I did have a conversation with one woman, and politics did come up. And I told her that I was a Democrat, and she said, well, you wouldn't fit in too well around here. I don't know if that's true. I like to think I can win people over, but we did meet some really nice people. We went to the Corn Crib in Normal for some baseball. We went to Dixon, Illinois. We followed river roads, and we ended up at O'Hare by 6 o'clock, picked up my daughter, Casey Blue, who's in from New York, and came home. It was a really nice 32 hours.
Very good, very good. I'm here to witness that you can, Michael, win over anyone if you
sometimes
set your mind to it.
On the global front, there are Trumpian tactics still continued in motion, trying to undo democracy in Peru, where Pedro Castillo was the victor. If he is denied victory, and on all accounts, the elections were legit and good, it could trigger widespread unrest and maybe end the country's democracy. We'll keep you posted on this, along with other news from South America when we have Brian Meir on next week. Also, just to note, the Chinese people are celebrating 100 years of the Communist Party with big parades, big events, and some strong talk from the premier.
We'll see. Closer to home, but affecting the entire planet, of course, are the environmental issues that are raised by the two dangerous fires in the last month near Chicago. As we tape, the Morris situation is active. Neighbors are still in evacuation and we're only 3 weeks post the Rockton fire at the Chemtool plant, where it was allowed to burn due to the fear of water contamination from putting water on the fire and letting the runoff go towards the river. These scenarios give us a hint, folks, of the chaos that can happen in an unregulated world. That's the kind of world that the Trump party is so fond of. They don't want to be told how to do anything, including how to keep you and me safe. The other incident that also might come to this, the tragic and sudden condo collapse in Florida. God help these people. Will this be, when all the smoke clears, the result of a building that shouldn't have been built where it was, or simply not paying attention to the inspections that had already found structural defects as far back as 2017?
Yeah. A little bit of negative news on that, following that, from South Dakota, where the South Dakota governor, Kristi Noem, is at it again. She wants to send her state's National Guard to the Mexico border in Texas because she thinks Biden is making America unsafe. Only problem? Well, it's not the only one, but she wants to pay for it, this engagement with private donations from some right-wing money bags. It's not her private militia, and hopefully there will be some blockage of this move on her part. We'll see. Stay tuned.
Yeah. She wants to do whatever she wants to do. That gal is really,
She's a
she's
problem.
wild. Another unwelcome piece of news this week was Bill Cosby's release from jail. It's based on a legal glitch, a supposed promise not to prosecute. It has nothing to do with whether or not he committed the acts he was convicted of. Nothing to do with that. He was convicted of those. That conviction stands. But what doesn't is the legal prosecution that somebody somewhere along the line said wasn't going to happen. No. Look, this does not mean, guys, the Me Too movement is going away. Far from it.
Right.
It's just this type of good old boys club kind of BS that fires our spirits to avenge the assaulted, and we will not rest.
Onward. Some good news from Chicago. A new monument created by famed Chicago artist Richard Hunt, a statue of Ida B. Wells called The Light of Truth, was unveiled in Bronzeville this week. It's a culmination of years of organizing, and we're really glad that it's up. We're really glad it's happening, and we do look forward to going in and seeing it.
Yeah, a really excellent article. We should let people know in Block Club by Jamie Nesbitt Golden goes after that, as well as the uncovering that however many parks are named after slaveholders in Chicago, which it's just a great article. Check out Block Club on the new monument and dealing with some old ones. Our neighbors and friends, our fellow citifies in New York City, chose their mayor, are in the middle of choosing their mayor with using ranked choice vote system. Catherine Garcia and Eric Adams are neck and neck at this point. There were 13 Dems running to begin. No one won more than 32% of the first ballot. And so they continue. Unfortunately, New York City did a really bad job of rolling it out. It does not mean it's fraudulent. It just means they've got some people in charge who don't know what they're doing, truly. And it was the first time. So they need to learn some lessons from Maine. The state of Maine has been using ranked choice voting for a decade. The entire country of Ireland has used it. And they have results within 2 or 3 days, not the week or more that this is going to take. They have corrected their initial mistake, and the absentee ballots, or mail-in ballots, as they're now called, will decide the election probably by early next week.
On the COVID front, reopening continues, certainly in Chicago, and proof of that is the day we're taping, we are going to a Sox game, and I am looking forward to it. I got my White Sox shirt on. Masks are still required on public transportation and inside many stores. Folks should certainly try to maintain the practices that we've learned, be it hand washing, sanitizing habits, some physical distancing. We don't know where it's going because there's a lot of COVID and various strains of it excelling in certain places, more so in red states, particularly in the state of Missouri, a neighbor of Illinois, and in the southwest corner, the virus is out of control. So it's a mixed bag, and it is a struggle between people who see a way out and a method to do so, as well as those who pretend it doesn't exist and try to ignore it until it hits them in the face, so to speak.
Yeah. So with that, let's take a break and go to our first guest. You are listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM, Chicago Sound Alliance. Stay tuned for our first guest, Ray Long, after this taste of Iron Butterfly.
Oh.
In a garden of Peter, honey, don't you know that I'm loving you? In a garden of Peter, baby, don't you know that I'll always be true? Oh, won't you
Haven't heard that song in a while. Anyhow, that was good. And it was a request by our next guest, Ray Long. Good morning to you, Ray.
Good morning there, Michael and Katie.
You were introduced to us, or my friend Bill Knight, when I was running around Central Illinois, your old turf, last week. He suggested I get a hold of you, that you'd be a good guest on the show. You've covered government. You've covered a couple of governors who went to prison. You've covered a Senate candidate who went on to be the president.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. And I guess the way we ought to start, because it's a motivator for getting you on, is what's going on with the Chicago Tribune?
Oh boy. Well, I'm staying. That's one thing. That's the first question a lot of people are asking me. I'm staying, but we've lost a lot of colleagues here just in the last couple of weeks. We've lost 40 plus people. Most of them are fellow guild members. And we lost, about 15 management people and 26 or so people who were in the union. And so that's a chunk of the newsroom, right? We had over 100 guild members before this, and now we're down to upper 80s. And we still have a staff with management of around 100. But when I first started there 23, 24 years ago, there were 500 or 600 on the reporting staff. So we've gradually come down to this number. The latest was a result of buyouts that were made by our new owners, a hedge fund called Alden Global. And they have a reputation, as you probably know, of stripping newspaper newsrooms down. We're the folks who cost money in one respect, because we're not out there selling ads and stuff like that. We're writing news. But they are apparently viewing us as the costs. And so what happens is we have lost a lot of well-known names in the Chicago area. Metro columnist Mary Schmeek, who won a Pulitzer Prize, John Cass, who was a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize, Eric Zorn, who was intrepid and always thought-provoking, and Darlene Glanton, who was very much a voice that was needed here in Chicago, who covered communities all across the city and specialized in pointing out the voice of African Americans here in Chicago too. So we're down now to a one Metro columnist, Rex Hupke, and we just lost or losing the editorial page editor this week. So, we're all in kind of a big shuffle right now, but we're still feisty. We still have many of the folks who are on the main government beats, still have investigative reporters like me. I used to be a government beat reporter for, decades. And so, we're still going to be in there punching. Now we're going to have to punch above our weight.
Is that still, I'm sorry, Michael, is that still your beat, the government reporter?
I do mostly government investigations now. So I do a little more in-depth reporting than I used to, but I was in Springfield for decades, literally 17 for the Tribune, but I also worked down there for the Peoria Journal-Star years ago when I was starting out. And I covered City Hall here in Chicago and Cook County government here in Chicago for the Sun-Times in the early 90s. And I would parachute into Springfield along the way. So I've kept my hand in state government and following Speaker Madigan, et cetera, for a long, long time.
Well, I wanted to go a little bit deeper in how those of you who remain are actually feeling. I got an email yesterday from a friend named Don Hopi, who was a reporter, environmental reporter for the Pittsburgh Gazette, describing a similar situation. And he was, he really loved the paper, he loved the job, and he's a little bit bitter about the way it's all come down. And I'm wondering, even though your group of you are still there to carry on, what are you saying behind the scenes and stuff?
Well, we're disappointed, right? We're disappointed that the company is viewing us more as costs and content providers than, actual reporters who have spent years and decades developing sources and and looking for the stories that people need to hear, not just the ones they want to hear. We're not necessarily the people out there who are grinding out the clickbait that'll get you to click on something just because it sounds interesting, or the latest thing about Jennifer and Alex or Benifer or whatever, you know. So we're actually in there digging, and I've done many investigations on now ex-speaker Michael Madigan and the whole ComEd investigation that's going on here, and I will continue to be doing that as well as other things too.
What role has the guild played, or the union played, in this? And are there any options in the future to protect those of you who still remain?
We're in an interesting situation because it's been 3 years since we organized. And what has happened is that we have not gotten a contract yet, but because we're in this kind of status position, if you will, they cannot go in unilaterally and make layoffs. So we're holding on to that. It's not a bad position to be in. Actually, it gives us some level of protection, and we are standing on that right now, and gives us the idea that we can still come in and fight. We've negotiated for more time to consider whether we wanted to take those buyouts, and we've negotiated for individual members along the way and raised issues, everything from are we paying enough attention to this community or that community, or raising coverage issues too. So it's been a good experience. I, many moons ago, used to be a union vice president in the Peoria paper, and I was chief bargainer and union steward and all that kind of stuff. And so I know the value of the protection, and we are still fighting for good pay, good insurance, good retirement benefits, those kinds of things that are kind of bedrock, a bedrock trilogy, if you will.
Ray, let me ask you, where do you think, in general, for all these journalists who've been put out of work around the country, where do they go and what do they do? And I guess part of that is, what do these changes at the Tribune mean for journalism in general in Chicago, the state, the nation?
Well, it's your questions are on the mark. The issue here is that the fewer people you have out watching the community, or gathering news, or watchdogging public officials, the more you see governments get away with stuff, right? So we hope to continue our robust approach on government beats. Like I said, we're fortunate that our federal beat reporter, a longtime political great reporter, Rick Pearson, is still there. Many of our government people, Megan Crepeau on criminal courts, our whole crime team, they're all there. So we have not lost our Marines, our front line of defense, who go out and cover the stories that need to be told.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
What's the status of the Sun-Times? Are they in a similar boat? I know they went small. They did get bought, I think, or now owned by someone more progressive than the hedge company that owns yours. But what's their status?
I think they're in pretty good shape. And I think now we're much closer in size to them than we ever have been. So they've got a lot of veterans there. They're a good paper. I used to work there many years ago. And I then transferred to Springfield to be with my wife, who was a magazine editor in Springfield. And I grabbed a job with AP, and then the Tribune job popped open in the State House, and I snagged that. But, it's a great paper. I would have stayed there if I hadn't found the need to, move and be in the same town as my wife, right?
I've got one more question on the Tribune.
Sure.
And that was New City reported, that's where I read it, that Chris Jones, who's been the theater critic,
Right.
is now taking over the editorial page. They
Right.
thought this was a good move, not as far to the right as the Tribune editorial page has been. What are your thoughts on that from your, I assume, a friend associate?
Oh, yeah,
with
he's a
Dylan?
great guy. He's a great writer. He's a great thinker. And those are key points and key um, uh, attributes that you need in a good editorial page editor. Now, he'll have a learning curve to deal with some of the government issues, but he's astute. He's stayed on top of things. He's still going to keep his hand in some of the theater criticism around town too. So he's a dynamo, and he can write fast and he can write well, and it'll be really interesting to see where he takes that page.
So I'm just going to bring it out a little more broadly, kind of from a civics point of view. After covering so many of the governmental bodies here in the state of Illinois, from the city to the state, is there or are there processes that you've covered with regularity that always say to you, why does the public not know more about this?
Yeah, it is frustrating. I do think that civics should be taught more in school. I think people have to understand that there is a difference between state legislators in Springfield and congressmen who are in DC, and a lot of people get confused on some of the basics like that. They also get confused on the idea that, you know, if you have to dig in 3 or 4 steps into an issue, you often lose them. And I don't blame them for that. They have their own lives to live. But I wish that they could get into issues more than at a surface level. And so you can understand where issues are getting clogged up, or why they are deadlocked in Congress, why they need a filibuster in DC, or do they not need a filibuster in DC, why the Democrats in Springfield may have been able to put more pork into their districts than the minority Republicans. So why also do you have kids living in one zip code with a lesser education level or less money pumped into their schools than people who live in New Trier, right? So I think that people, I just wish that they could, you know, pay more attention, because I write a lot of times about scandal and things like that, and people read that and eat it up. But there are issues that are rolling down in Springfield, for example, every day that impact people in their daily lives.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was after. I'm amazed at how ignorant we are willing to stay as members of this great society. Michael, you want to ask something about marijuana?
Well, I do want to ask about marijuana, but before we ask about marijuana, can you give us a little in-depth on what's going on with Madigan, what we might expect?
Well, sure.
We've covered it really closely, and we brought it up, you know, regularly, but you probably have insider info.
Well, what I've been able to detect, and what I'm sure you've been able to detect, is the feds are clearly circling Madigan. They've just recently indicted his former chief of staff, who was there for decades, and it was a guy named Tim Mapes, who was also anointed the House clerk by Madigan and was also the executive director of the Democratic Party of Illinois. So he knows a lot of issues. They got him for allegedly lying to a grand jury because they think that he is not telling them everything he knows. And so they've got him, that they're working hard. They've also already indicted Mike McLean, who is a state rep from Quincy. This is a guy who knew Madigan as well as anybody, and would be one of the few people who would go out to dinner with him at night in Springfield. And he was knowing Madigan back to the 70s when they were both legislators. McLean became a lobbyist, worked for ComEd, and allegedly cut all kinds of deals on Madigan's behalf because of ComEd. Those two guys are really among the closest people Madigan had around him. And so the government, as Mapes people and as McLean's lawyer has said, the government's trying to squeeze them to get them to talk. Whether they can and whether there's anything to talk about is still an issue. But I do know we reported just recently that former lawmakers who were in the House, former Democrats who were in the House, have been before the grand jury in recent weeks, and they've been asked about how Madigan ran the chamber. And there have been others. I talked to one former legislator who told me that the feds showed up at this person's door and started asking the same kinds of questions. And these people are not targets of the investigation, but the feds are trying to figure out every angle about how Madigan operated down there. So the investigation's still going. The federal grand jury is still going. I don't anticipate anything before the 4th of July, obviously, but the issue is still alive.
One of the things that we take interest in is marijuana and marijuana legislation. And I wanted to know your take on marijuana legislation, both in Chicago and in the state. You wrote a piece about Chicago-based marijuana giant, part of a federal pay-to-play investigation. How about filling us in on that and the topic in general?
Well, that's a tough one. What we wrote was that they're under investigation. The company has disputed that, but we've stood by the story. And so we're still digging, and we anticipate that we will know more in the near future. But as far as the legislative scene here in Illinois, they passed more legislation here to, in theory, give minorities a chance to get into the game. They said they were going to give them a chance to get into the game early on, but it's mostly been people with money who have been able to start these different companies that sell the product or grow the product in Illinois.
So I'm just going to ask some for good news.
Yeah.
Given that you're a mid or downstater by birth and living for many years, share with us some of Illinois' treasures. The good things going on in our state, which generally don't have much to do with politics. So,
Well, one thing right off the bat, of course, living in Springfield, I know all about all the Lincoln sites, but it's not just the tomb, it's not just the home, but it's the old state capitol where he actually was and gave his House Divided speech. And if you're into history, those are cherished places, but they also have a terrific Abraham Lincoln Museum. And also, they have a place that you can tour. It's not just a library, but the museum itself really kind of immerses you into the whole Lincoln era and aura. And some people actually come out of that in tears. They have a funeral scene there after you see different stages where he's, doing the Emancipation Proclamation, where he's celebrating the victory, et cetera, of the Civil War. They have enormous crowds that come there. They even have one cool display that is really original, where it gives all of the various battles that in like 3 or 4 minutes, they pop up here and there, and the body count goes on and on and on along there too. It's really stunning. And apparently they put together numbers that had never been seen before. And, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people from both sides that died. Now, Illinois is a beautiful state. It has the Shawnee National Forest down at the south end. Beautiful, beautiful scenery, great places you can stay. Starved Rock is one of my favorite places in the state. Galena is another great place. If you haven't hit those places, you're really missing out. Even my old stomping grounds in Peoria has really revived itself and has nice activities on the river, and that was the place, of course, where they have long played the Illinois Basketball Association championships too.
Right.
So it's a wonderful state. There's little museums all over. They even have a Wyatt Earp Museum in Monmouth, Illinois, where he was born, if you didn't know that. And so there's all kinds of cool little places, a coal museum, Lincoln log cabin, restored village just outside of Springfield. So yeah, it's a great state. If you don't get out and see it every once in a while, you're missing out.
Ray Long, I'm sorry, our next guest is in the waiting room, so we can't even ask you about your long history as a band member from the old days. So we'll have to invite you back. If
you got a breaking story, let me know, because we'll have you on.
Okay, sounds great. It's great to talk to you, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, bye-bye.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM and WLUW.org anywhere in the world. Stay tuned for our next guest, Chris Bell, talking about the Flats and Sharp Music Fest this weekend. And we'll have her on right after a little bit of a taste of Mavis Staples doing Living on a High Note.
There are all of those things you weren't supposed to do. Yes, and my, they were talking to you. There were all of those words that you shouldn't have said. Like a dagger thrown, carry weight of lead. Living on a high note, living on a high note, living on a high note. Listen now that it's known, and the way it's been shown. Yes, and my, you have grown. Gather all of the rain and every ounce of pain. Wash the dirt and dust down the drain. It's living on a high note, living on a high note, living on a high note. It's living on a high note, living on a high note, living on a high note. And if you gotta sing alone, sometimes the way to go.
Joe, he looked over at Dave.
All right. I love Mavis. Thank you for giving us another excuse to play Mavis, Chris. And welcome back to Live from the Heartland. So part of the reason, the main reason that we called you here for this time was the upcoming music festival right around the corner next Saturday. Why don't you tell us about it? It's not the first time, but it does mark a return to live music in the hood post-COVID. So tell us the history of this mighty fest and what it will include next Saturday.
Yeah, sure. So, we're just so lucky that there's a music store in Rogers Park, right? Not every neighborhood gets to have a music store in it. And we do lessons and sell instruments and gear. And so we know a lot of musicians. And everyone performing at the festival has a Rogers Park connection. And that's from our students. We have 5 bands of all kids in grammar school. They're going to be performing earlier in the day. And so it's going to be super family friendly, certainly before 5 o'clock. And with toddler stuff, grammar school stuff, high school kids playing, and then it'll shift into this more rock and roll and drinking in the streets, sort of vibe.
2 of your favorite things.
I'm good at both of them.
The entire community is good at both of them.
Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about a little more detail on it. Some of the bands that are going to be playing, and is there going to be food, other booths?
Right, yeah. So food, we're just supporting all the local food restaurants just right on Sheridan. There's Rice Thai, there's the Great Wall Chinese food, there's Asahi sushi. There's, of course, the Oasis Bar and Tavern. They're our co-sponsor in this.
Ooh,
Ben, the owner, and his manager, April, are absolute gems to work with. And it's just kind of fun, like being over on that side of the neighborhood. There's not a whole lot that goes on. And so to be able to work with the Oasis in this kind of event, it's super fun working with them. And we have the lineup, we took great care to keep as much of a culturally diverse lineup as possible, as well as age differences and some strong girl power in our lineup. And we just wanted our lineup to reflect the neighborhood, you know? So we did Black Angus is our closer. And if you like rock and roll,
they're gonna rock the socks off of that whole block. I saw
oh my gosh, you guys, they're gonna kill it. If you like AC/DC, come out and see these guys. They're everything I've seen, they just slay, and they're the nicest dudes in the world.
Chris, you did another festival in front of Ennui for a few years, right? You were involved in doing that.
No, that wasn't me. That was actually Tenley and Kathy.
Oh, okay.
They did the Jazz Fest, yeah, and it was awesome.
But
and
you have
done
done this one on Columbia before, because I was at it.
Yes, we did this one in 2019, was our first festival. And so we were hoping it would be like twice as big by now, but COVID kind of put the brakes on that.
Right.
But I was involved with Wisdom Bridge. I hosted the World Music Fest stage for 3 years, twice on Howard and once in Toohey Park.
I guess what I was going to ask you was that what does holding these amazing music events in the neighborhood, what has it taught you? What have you learned about how to do it right and how not to do it? But mostly, what can it bring to a community like ours?
Yeah, that's a great really a great question, Katie. So it all comes down to like the organizing, and the way what I learned from the World Music Fest is I try and stay the hub of the wheel, and then my spokes is someone doing marketing, someone doing vendors, someone doing the stage, so, and then I get to work with all these different people in the neighborhood, and I get introduced to these little subgroups within the neighborhood. Sure. You know what I mean? Like everyone like reaches into their own personal contacts, and it personally, it opens up my world to a whole new, circle of people. But it's always great, and you guys know you do a ton of civic duty stuff. You know that what that brings back when you start to work with your neighbors and meet your neighbors, it makes it a safer neighborhood at the end of the day. Absolutely. When we walk down the street and we recognize each other and say, hey, or in the grocery store, it makes it a closer, safer neighborhood all the way around, for sure.
Chris, you created an amazing little video about the reopening of your 2 stores, one here and one further west. But I was kind of curious about how has business been in the time of COVID for retail operation? Bars, restaurants, we hear a lot of news about them, but not a lot of reporting about what it's like for small businesses. You've been open throughout in one form or another. Tell us how you've done it, what it's been like, and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, thanks. Boy, Amazon really did well. Didn't Amazon, really did well during all of this.
Yeah.
And then, for us smaller retailers, we don't have that sort of
money.
money and resources, right? So sure, we would have loved to have blasted out that we also have online shopping, but you can't even find the small person in that.
Yeah.
With that said, we were fine. We were just fine. No one missed a lesson. Not one teacher missed a paycheck. We had been using Zoom for 3 years already. So we had a platform and we moved everyone online within 72 hours. No one missed a beat. And our retention rate, when we didn't have baseball, football, drama, when we didn't have that competition, we had like a 90% retention rate with our students. So it was really amazing. And we found a lot of people learn better online, and they're just going to stay online. Some people just do better. Some people don't do better and, are dying to get back. But some people, I don't know, there's a focus thing. So it was really interesting in an educational way to see how people learn and how they thrive,
That's interesting.
And then on the retail side, it's shipping and manufacturing. Everybody stopped manufacturing. So even at our Norwood Park store, I haven't had a guitar to sell in 6 months. I can't get a guitar. I can't get anything in.
Oh,
so
because
what do you
of
do about that?
The supply disruption?
Yeah.
Wow. So what about just a little neighborhood gossip? I mean, Starbucks made it through, although on my longer walks, I could no longer rely on going in there to use the washroom because they didn't allow that during COVID, even while they were selling coffee. And the new place, I think you just said its name, in the old Deluxe Coffee Spot.
Oh no, that was
Ethiopia.
Yeah. What is the new spot's name? I'm sorry to have it. You don't know it either.
Oh boy, I feel terrible. I haven't even eaten over there.
I know, me neither. Okay, we'll do better.
It's not a coffee spot. It's like a restaurant now.
Yeah, no, it's a full deal restaurant, and it's been plastic enclosed since they opened it. So they came in with COVID, and I was just wondering how they did. But we'll have to do some research on that. How about the 400 Theater reopening this weekend?
Yep.
I'm thrilled.
Tony weathered that storm. Yeah.
I'd love it.
It's nice to see. And actually it's a Latin fusion restaurant on the corner there. And they plasticed up, they did the thing, they weathered the storm too. So no shuttered doors, Armadillo's Pillow, no shuttered doors in our little corridor right there.
That's great.
Even with the lack of Loyola students.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that tells a story within itself that yes, we appreciate Loyola University and the students, but the neighborhood can hold its own too.
Wow, that's great.
Chris, you shared with Katie that you've been part of some interesting meetings as a result of getting the permit for this event. This event being the Flats and Sharp Music Fest, Saturday the 10th, next week. Can you share with us what was interesting and brighten you up in the D-Case meeting you recently attended on Zoom? Fill us in.
Yeah, that was super fun. I was telling Katie, I don't know how, I was the smallest potato in that bunch for sure. And there were some heavy hitters, some big organizers in this meeting. And everyone was talking about like big festival, like the big taco and tamale festival in Pilsen, and the people from Talia Hall, Empty Bottle in Space, and some heavy hitters were there that are doing much bigger festivals than us. I aspire to be more like them for sure. And everyone started sharing about their project and who they were working with. And the commissioner of D-Case was there, and his, and I believe the assistant commissioner, I just got her first name is Juan, and her excitement about music in Chicago was infectious. And she shared this statistic with us that in a national poll, I don't know what the specs on the poll were, but that Chicago came in 6th below Miami as being known as a city known for its music.
Wow.
We all went, wait, what? That's
Yeah.
crazy that we're not known for music here. I mean, house music was invented here, blues. I mean, Just Records, man. Like we can go on and on, right? I
Right.
mean, what about the band Chicago? Like we could go on and on. So when people started sharing about their projects, the one thing the commissioner and Juan were really pressing is that they want. So they have a citywide initiative, and it's called Chicago in Tune, and their branding is music in the key of Chicago.
Huh.
So both I love both of those taglines. I love music in the key of Chicago.
Yeah.
And they really want to mix up, we're looking to us for suggestions, like how do we get, a lot of these South and West Side bands are playing on the North Side. How do we get these North Siders over to the South and West Sides to their festivals? And how do we, I'm always talking about mixing up this, this economic pot and, cultural pot we have in the city. And I had suggested how great it would be if there was a place where we could share our volunteer lists. I just happen to have a personal
good idea.
relationship with all my bands. Hey, what are your bands that you guys know? Let's start switching bands and then have the crowds follow them to these different neighborhoods. And I made it a point. I wrote down everybody's festival, and I'm going to as many of these festivals on the South and West Side as possible to help in with that initiative. Because
Love that. Love that.
Right? Yeah. Why
Yeah.
aren't I going to more? I love music. I don't care what the music is. You guys love music. I don't care. Like food on a stick, I'm in. Let's go. Yeah. So the city is excited about it, and I hope there's some more movement and momentum on that ground moving forward.
So can we just finish by asking you, one of the important gifts of Flats and Sharps for all the time it's been around are the lessons provided for students of music, as well as, I have a keyboard in my house that came from your store. A lot of people have guitars and tin whistles, etc. But those lessons seem, I don't know what percentage of your business, but it means so much that, like you said at the start, that we have this in our own neighborhood. Now I forgot my question. Gosh.
That's right. But you know what these students are? These students are tomorrow's musicians. These students are the audiences of tomorrow for our younger people. Right. This is, and again, going back into this, this stirring the pot for economic and cultural change, not every school is gifted with the same benefits as others, but with music, you can get a scholarship into these schools. You can get your big toe into a pot via music that you may not be able to get in otherwise. And we really try and pride ourselves on that and lifting people up and pushing them forward.
Well,
I got to say that I had a few kids that studied music over there, including Cadian and the Twin Peaks guys.
Yeah, I think Cadian's taking lessons right now. He's taking drum lessons with Joe, a matter of fact.
As a matter of fact, he is. He's got a little recording studio. He's got a lot of things in the work, and I hear him practicing those drums all the time. It used to be a guitar, now it's drums and a guitar.
We talk about kids, but the benefits of older people taking music lessons, you guys, is huge. It's huge.
Hey, I'm
the arthritic fingers.
I'm gonna be talking to you about the piano lessons I need to take.
You should. I'm going to start taking piano lessons again too. I'm the worst. I never ever practiced.
Is John still your main piano teacher?
No, John's over in Florida now. How about that?
Right.
Yeah, so he's moved away, but we have tons of other piano teachers, and we teach 7 days a week.
Wow. Well, we're going to let you go and organize your, I'm sure you've got a lot of details to tend to, but let's remind people that next Saturday, July 10th, is the the day of this beautiful festival. It's called the Flats and Sharps Music Fest, right?
Lights and Sharp Music Fest. We are asking a suggested $10 donation if you're so
Oh, yeah.
inclined to help us.
Make sure to
break
make that
even.
clear.
But the main platform is to give a platform for all the artists and musicians that have not had a platform over the last year. And we're just looking forward to having that energy go back and forth again.
Great, good work, Chris. Thank
Thanks,
you
Chris.
so much.
Thanks, guys. Good to
Thanks
see you.
for
Have a
coming
great
in.
day.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Oh, that was great. I love that. I love that festival. What do we got next week? You wanted to let people know, remind people?
Well, our friend Brian Meir has been living in Brazil for many, many years, and he's been on the show in the last 6 months with a report about what's going on with Bolsonaro and others. He's going to be here next week with a little report on things to know about South America, Central America. So stay tuned and be ready for next week's Live from the Heartland.
So next week we'll probably have more on this, but I'm just wondering if the violence epidemic in Chicago will be affected by the meeting that was forced on both the mayor and the superintendent by city council this week. We don't have the results of it yet, but we will continue to talk about police reform and the consent decree and real investment in the neighborhoods that need it. For those of you doing fireworks this weekend, please be kind, please be careful. Please don't do them after midnight. And for those of you with pets, take care of them because I know they'll be upset.
Yeah, there's a lot of noises. They don't like it.
Yeah.
In memoriam, I'm sorry to report that an old friend of mine, Dr. Hardy Fry out in California, who was a longtime activist. He was in Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I received word the other day that he has passed away. That would be Hardy Fry. You could check him out. We're really sorry. He did good. Rest in peace. And I'm going to do a little follow-up for sports. Phil Shinnick, who was the founder of Athletes United for Peace, he, in a meet in 1963, jumped 8.33 meters, 27 1/3 feet. And that would have been a brand new record set at the California Relays in Modesto. It would have been a new world record. He's been fighting to have that recognized, and there was some question about tailwinds, but no documentation. He finally achieved what he was seeking, some glory around that, and being recognized by the World Athletic Community as the long jump world record holder. And he was invited last week to the U.S. Olympic trials, which were hosted by the United States Track and Field. And he was presented with a plaque from two-time world champion Mike Powell, who was the current world record holder. There's a really nice picture of the two of them. I'll try to get it for when we put this up for people who look at the show, of him and Powell with big smiles on their faces. So congratulations to Phil Shinnick. You've been an activist athlete for many, many years, and we're glad you got the recognition you are due. You
bless your heart, Phil. And that's a really nice touch. You have been listening to a show that's been on the air for over 25 years. We've brought you live from the Heartland, now called Heartland at Home. Hope to be live again someday. But we are broadcast every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Chicago's WLUW 88.7 FM, streaming live from WLUW.org and archived on our channel at youtube.com/Heartland Media. We will also be cablecast most weeks on Chicago's CAN TV, channel 27. We want to thank the team, Gwen Brown, Luis Mejia, Lynn Orman Weiss, and the absent members, Jim Porter. James, I want my book back. Never mind. And Tom Clark, who we hope to see over the holiday weekend. We ask you always to do good in the world.
The world needs all the good that we do.
All power.
All power to the people.